As the sun rose over the pristine waters of the Great Barrier Reef, Harvey woke up in his small cabin on board the dive boat. He was excited to begin another day of diving and exploring the wonders of the reef. After a quick breakfast, Harvey joined his fellow divers on the deck to gear up for the first dive. The crew helped him check their equipment, including the scuba tanks, weight belts, and wetsuits. Once everything was set, Harvey and the other divers donned their masks and fins and plunged into the crystal-clear water. As he descended, Harvey felt the cool water envelop him. He gazed around him, marveling at the colorful corals and the schools of tropical fish that darted past him. He spotted a giant manta ray gliding gracefully overhead, and he felt a rush of excitement and awe. For the next hour, Harvey and his dive buddies explored the reef, taking in the breathtaking beauty of this underwater paradise. They spotted a sea turtle lazily swimming by, and Harvey snapped some photos with his underwater camera. He also saw a small octopus hiding in a crevice and a bright orange starfish clinging to a rock. As they ascended back to the surface, Harvey felt a sense of exhilaration and joy. He couldn't wait for the next dive, which was scheduled for later that morning. After a brief break, Harvey and the others geared up again and headed back into the water. This time, they were on a mission to locate a sunken shipwreck that was rumored to be in the area. Using their compasses and underwater maps, they navigated through the reef until they reached the spot where the wreck was supposed to be. At first, they saw nothing but sand and coral. But suddenly, Harvey spotted a dark shape looming in the distance. As they got closer, they realized it was indeed a shipwreck covered in barnacles and surrounded by schools of fish. They swam around the wreck, exploring its nooks and crannies and taking more photos. Harvey was thrilled to have discovered such an amazing sight, and he felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. After the second dive, Harvey and the others returned to the dive boat, tired but happy. They chatted about their experiences and shared their photos, swapping stories and tips. Harvey couldn't believe how lucky he was to have such an incredible job, exploring one of the most beautiful places on Earth. As the sun set over the reef, Harvey settled into his cabin, ready for a good night's sleep. He knew that tomorrow would bring more adventures and more discoveries, and he couldn't wait to see what the reef had in store for him next. Harvey had always been fascinated by shipwrecks, and after yesterday's dive where they discovered one in the Great Barrier Reef, he knew he had to return for a closer look. He planned his dive carefully, ensuring he had all the necessary gear, and set out early in the morning together with his fellow divers. As they approached the shipwreck, he noticed something moving in the distance. At first, he assumed it was just a school of fish, but as he got closer, he realized it was something much bigger. A great white shark. Harvey's heart began to race with excitement and apprehension. He had never encountered great white sharks up close before, and he knew that one wrong move could mean disaster. As Harvey entered the water, he was immediately struck by the sheer size and power of the great white sharks. They glided through the water with an effortless grace, their razor-sharp teeth gleaming in the sunlight. Despite their fearsome reputation, Harvey felt a deep respect and awe for these magnificent creatures. He moved slowly and deliberately, keeping a safe distance while carefully tagging each one with a small device. As the day wore on, Harvey's initial apprehension began to give way to a sense of wonder and exhilaration. He was witnessing one of nature's most incredible spectacles, and he knew that he was privileged to be a part of it. Harvey watched a massive shark circling around the shipwreck. He knew that great whites were common in the area, but he had never encountered one up close before. He hesitated for a moment, wondering if they should abandon the dive, but his curiosity got the better of him, and he convinced the others to press on. They approached the wreck slowly and carefully, keeping a close eye on the shark. As they got closer, Harvey realized that the wreck was home to a whole ecosystem of marine life. Schools of fish swam in and out of the nooks and crannies, and he saw lobsters and crabs scurrying along the ocean floor. He also noticed that the great white shark seemed to be hunting around the wreck, using it as a source of food. Harvey watched in amazement as the shark darted in and out of the shadows, searching for prey. For a few minutes, Harvey forgot his fear and was completely absorbed in the underwater world around him. He was so engrossed in his observations when he felt something shift in his backpack. He tried to adjust it, but in doing so, he accidentally kicked a small rock that had been resting on the ocean floor. The sound of the rock hitting the shipwreck echoed through the water, and suddenly, Harvey heard a loud thrashing sound. He looked around and saw a massive shark heading straight for him. Harvey knew that he had made a mistake. He had accidentally disturbed the shark's peaceful existence and now put himself in grave danger. He tried to swim away as fast as he could, but the shark was too fast. It closed in on him, and Harvey could see its sharp teeth glinting in the dim light. The group was horrified as they watched the shark relentlessly attack Harvey, its jaws clamped tightly around his shoulder. Without wasting a second, the group of divers sprang into action. They formed a human chain, trying to distract the shark and draw its attention away from Harvey. Some of them even swam towards the shark and tried to hit it with their diving gear. Another diver signaled for the group to surface and call for help, hoping that a nearby boat or rescue team could come to their aid. However, the shark was too strong and too determined to let go of its prey. It thrashed around violently, causing chaos in the water. The shark was relentless, and it took all of the divers' courage and strength to keep it at bay. They were finally able to pry Harvey free from the shark's jaws, but unfortunately, it was too late. The force of the shark's bite had already decapitated Harvey. Despite the divers' valiant efforts, they were unable to save Harvey from the shark's jaws. As the reality of the situation set in, the divers were left feeling helpless and devastated. They had lost a member of their group, a friend, and a fellow adventurer. They felt a deep sense of grief and sorrow. They knew that the memory of that terrifying encounter with the shark would stay with them forever. They were shocked by the suddenness and violence of the attack, as well as by the realization of how short life was. The sight of their friend being attacked by the shark was something that would haunt them for a long time to come. In the aftermath of the attack, the group was left with a renewed respect for the power and unpredictability of nature, as well as a greater appreciation for the fragility of life. They knew that they had been lucky to escape with their lives, and that they would need to be even more careful and vigilant in the future. Juan woke up in the early hours of the morning. He lived in a small town in Florida, right on the coast, and his job as a fisherman required him to wake up early in order to get a head start on the day. He got out of bed, stretched his arms and legs, and then put on his fishing clothes. Juan had been a fisherman for most of his life. He had learned the trade from his father, who had been a fisherman before him. Juan loved being out on the water, feeling the salt air on his face and the wind in his hair. He loved the challenge of trying to catch fish, and he loved the freedom that came with being his own boss. Juan walked out of his small house and walked down to the dock where he kept his boat. The dock was busy with other fishermen who were also getting ready for their day on the water. Juan greeted his fellow fishermen with a smile and a wave, and then began to prep his boat. He checked the fuel, the water, and the other important systems on his boat, making sure that everything was in good working order. Then he loaded his gear, including his fishing rods, bait, and tackle, and set off into the open sea. The sky was just starting to turn pink and orange as Juan set out on his boat. He loved the feeling of the sun rising behind him and the way the light made the water sparkle. He headed out to his favorite fishing spot, a few miles from shore, and began to cast his lines. Fishing was not always easy, and it required a lot of patience and skill. Juan had to know where the fish would likely be, and he had to be able to read the currents and the tides in order to catch them. He spent several hours casting his lines, moving the boat around to different spots, and trying different kinds of bait. Finally, he felt a tug on his line, signaling that he had caught something. He began to reel in his line, feeling the weight of the fish pulling against the rod. When he finally saw the fish, he felt a rush of excitement. It was a large grouper, one of the most prized catches in Florida. He carefully brought the fish onto the boat, taking care to remove the hook and to measure it to make sure it was within the legal size limit. He put the fish into a cooler and then set out to catch more. After several minutes, he felt a strong tug on his line. He knew immediately that it was no ordinary fish. He began to reel in his line, feeling the weight of the creature pulling against his rod. As he brought the fish closer to the boat, he realized that he had caught something big. He could see the dorsal fin cutting through the water, and he knew that it was a shark. He could feel the adrenaline pumping through his veins as he battled the fish, trying to bring it in. Juan had mixed emotions about the catch. On the one hand, he felt a rush of excitement at the thought of catching such a powerful creature. On the other hand, he knew that sharks were dangerous animals, and he wasn't sure if he was equipped to handle one. He carefully pulled the shark closer to the boat, trying to keep a safe distance. As he got a closer look, he could see that it was a bull shark, a species known for its aggression and strength. The shark thrashed and fought against the line, trying to break free. Juan struggled to keep his footing as the boat rocked back and forth in the water. He knew he had to be careful, or the shark could easily pull him overboard. After a 20-minute battle, Juan was finally able to bring the shark up to the side of the boat. He could see its razor-sharp teeth and its powerful jaws. He knew that he had to be careful if he was going to release the shark back into the water. He carefully removed the hook from the shark's mouth and took a few quick photos, wanting to remember the experience. Just as he was about to measure the length of the shark, it began jerking around and bit him on his ankle. Luckily, he was able to pry away its jaws instantly and only left him with minor wounds. Because of this, he immediately decided to lower the shark back to the water. For a moment, the shark seemed disoriented and confused. Then it suddenly surged forward, disappearing into the depths of the ocean. Juan breathed a sigh of relief, feeling grateful for the experience, but also glad that it was over. Juan sat back in the boat and began treating his wounds, watching the waves ripple from where the shark had disappeared. He sailed back to the dock where he sought medical attention. He was sent home immediately after being treated for his minor wounds. Back at home, he told the unbelievable story to his family, and they knew he had just had one of the most thrilling experiences of his life. It was a moment he would never forget, and a reminder of the power and majesty of the sea. Sebastian and Olivia were a surfer couple from California, and they had been recently married. They always dreamed of spending their honeymoon in Hawaii, and they had been planning their dream honeymoon for months. They were both passionate about the ocean and the thrill of catching waves, and they couldn't wait to explore the famous surf spots in Hawaii. It was the perfect destination for the romantic getaway. As they landed in Honolulu, they were greeted by the sun and warm, salty breeze and the sound of waves crashing against the shore. They checked into their cozy beachfront cottage and immediately fell in love with the stunning scenery around them. And as they stepped onto the sand, they felt like they were in paradise. The first few days of their honeymoon were spent surfing some of the best waves in the world. They visited Waikiki Beach, where they rode the gentle waves and watched the local surfers show off their skills. They also went to the North Shore, where they challenged themselves with the bigger, more powerful waves. They also hiked through the lush rainforest, and they visited the historic Pearl Harbor Memorial. On the second week of their honeymoon, they decided to visit the island of Maui. There, they rented a Jeep and drove along the scenic road to Hana, taking in breathtaking views of the coastline. One day, they decided to try their luck at a secluded surf spot that they had heard about from the locals. It was a hidden gem surrounded by stunning cliffs and crystal clear water. As they paddled out, they noticed that there was no other surfers around, and they felt like they had found their own private paradise. But as they waited for the next set of waves, they suddenly heard a loud splash behind them. They noticed a dark shape moving towards them. At first, they thought it was a dolphin, but as it got closer, they realized it was a tiger shark, its jaws wide open. The shark's razor-sharp teeth were visible, and the couple froze in terror. Their hearts raced as they watched the shark swim towards them, its sharp teeth glinting in the sun. Sebastian and Olivia tried to paddle away, but the shark quickly caught up to them. The couple could see the shark circling them, and they knew they were in serious trouble. Fear filled their hearts as they saw the massive predator getting closer and closer. Olivia's heart was pounding as she remembered stories of tiger sharks attacking humans. She looked over at Sebastian, who was trying to remain calm, but she could see the fear in his eyes too. They had never felt so vulnerable before. The couple tried to stay together and keep their boards close, hoping that the shark would lose interest and swim away. But the tiger shark seemed to be fixated on them, and it kept circling them, getting closer with every pass. Olivia's mind raced as she tried to come up with a plan. She knew that they had to stay calm and not make any sudden movements that would attract the shark's attention. They had to make themselves as small and unappetizing as possible. As the shark swam closer, Sebastian grabbed Olivia's hand and whispered to her to stay still. He knew that any sudden movements could provoke the shark and make it attack. They watched in horror as the shark came closer and closer until they could see its eyes staring at them. Suddenly, the shark turned and swam away, disappearing into the depths of the ocean. The couple let out a sigh of relief, but they knew they had narrowly escaped a terrifying fate. They started paddling towards the shore as quickly as they could, hoping that the shark wasn't following them anymore. They could feel the fear rising in their chest, but they refused to give up. They kept paddling, their arms burning with exertion. Finally, they reached the shore and they scrambled into the sand, panting and sweating. Sebastian and Olivia paddled back to the shore, shaken but grateful to be alive. They knew that they had been lucky, and they would never forget the terror they had experienced that day. From that day on, they vowed to always be aware of the dangers of the ocean and to respect its creatures, especially the mighty tiger shark. As their honeymoon came to an end, Sebastian and Olivia knew that they had had a one-of-a-kind experience and made memories that would last a lifetime.